Alfred Nobel was a famous Swedish chemist, and he made a fortune inventing things like dynamite and other high explosives. And one day, Alfred Nobel's brother passed away. Well, the newspaper just picked up the Nobel obituary and ran it. Well, it was Alfred's obituary, not his brother's obituary. So Alfred reads his own obituary that day, and in the obituary it states that he had enabled people to kill others in unprecedented ways. Think on that. He's a man who's known for inventing ways to kill other people. Well, Alfred Nobel read his own obituary and decided to change things. He wanted to be known for something besides inventing a way for people to kill each other better. So Alfred does that. Alfred goes about spending his fortune inventing something that we know of as the Nobel Peace Prize. You see, a man who was known for inventing ways to kill people changed with the way the world and history remembered him by inventing something that honored peace. Alfred Nobel caught a glimpse of his future, a glimpse of how he would be remembered, and he changed his life. In today's passage, Jesus is going to give us a glimpse of the future. He's going to provide us an opportunity to assess how we're going to live from this day forward. See, Jesus and his disciples were leaving out of the temple one day, and his disciples looked around and they said, "Isn't this a great place? Isn't this a majestic temple? Look at these stones. Look how bright they are. Look how great this is." And Jesus is going to walk with them a little further, and he's going to say, "Yes, but this place is going to be destroyed. This place is going to come to an end." So when they get to where they're going, some of his disciples pull him aside and say, "Jesus, explain to us what you're talking about when you say this temple is going to be destroyed. It's a great place." So Jesus begins to teach them about not just the temple's destruction, but about something that's going to happen in the future, about his return. And he's going to challenge the disciples to be ready spiritually, to wait patiently, but also to be watchful and alert for his return. So let's look now at Mark chapter 13, verse 24 through 27. And let's see that believers should rejoice over the promised return of Jesus. "But in those days after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not shed its light. The stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. He will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven." Now, this passage picks up in the middle of Jesus' conversation with these guys. He's been telling them about a lot of terrible things are becoming their way. But Jesus gets to the end of that, and he gives us two parallel images about stars and the heavenly lights failing. And while Jesus could be painting a picture of something that's literally going to happen, it's more likely that Jesus is just painting a picture of the end of all things. He's saying everything's coming to an end. After all these bad things I've told you about, things are going to come to an end. And when the end comes, I'm coming back. I want you to take a second. I want you to look back at verse 26, and I want you to consider, how does Jesus' description of his return differ from his ministry on earth? The first difference that we see between Jesus' two advents is the witness. At Jesus' birth, there were just a few people. Not a lot of people saw his birth. And throughout Jesus' ministry, though while it was well known in Israel, it wasn't a big event on the world stage. Yes, it was super important, but not a lot of people around the world knew about Jesus' ministry. And so Jesus' first advent, when he came at Christmas and then ministered throughout his life, was not well known by a lot of people. But Jesus says when he comes back, it's going to be well known. Everybody's going to know that Jesus is back. Jesus has returned. First, the grammar that Mark uses says, "they will see." They, meaning everybody's going to see and know that Jesus returned. But his grammar also says they will see, meaning they're going to see and understand what has happened. You see, in Jesus' ministry on earth, many people saw it, but they didn't really understand what he was doing, understand that he was the Messiah, and understand even what that meant. And so Mark tells us that everybody's going to see it, and everybody's going to understand it. The second difference we see between Jesus' first advent and his second advent is the vestige of the one who comes. Now, where was Jesus born? He was born in a small town, in a small country, and he was born in a stable and placed in a manger. You see, Jesus was born to a poor family in a country controlled by other people. Jesus' first coming was not glorious. It wasn't grand. It was normal and maybe even considered despised and despicable by some. Look at Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. He was like someone people turned away from. He was despised, and we didn't value him. But his second coming is going to be glorious. It's going to be amazing. He's going to come as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I want you to take a moment and consider how the manner of Jesus' return gives believers confidence and hope. Considering all the terrible things Jesus just told them in chapter 13, his return can enable them to live faithfully, to strive for holiness. The same is true for us. When we look around the world around us, we can look forward to the coming back of Jesus, and we can live faithfully, and we can pursue holiness in that hope. But Jesus just isn't going to return. Jesus is going to do something. Look at verse 26 again. What's he going to do when he returns? It says he's going to gather his people to himself. This isn't just a people at one specific time, in one specific place. No, Jesus is going to gather all those who follow him throughout history together at that time. This will be the first time that the entire church has ever been together. Think on that. You know, you meet on Sundays, but on this day, not just your congregation, but all of the church, from the beginning to the end, is going to gather together with Jesus at his return. That can cause us to respond in two ways. We can respond in hope-filled living. Also, we can respond to Jesus gathering all of us together with the fact that when Jesus gathers those who follow him together, there's going to be some who have not followed him who will not be in that gathering. So that should cause us not just to live with hope, but also to live with a purpose to tell others about his return and how they can be a part of that gathering. You see, Jesus has gathered these four men together. He's explaining some things to them, and he's trying to give them hope. He's trying to give them a reason to rejoice over his promised return. Now, we can rejoice in Jesus' return, and we can live in hope, but we don't need to live idly. We need to be doing something. That's what Jesus is going to tell us next. Go back to Mark chapter 13, verse 28, and see that believers can live with confidence when they base their lives on the promises of Jesus. Learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its branches become tender and sprout leaves, you know summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, recognize that he is near, at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. In Mark chapter 13, verse 4, the disciples said, "Tell us when all this will happen. When will all this take place, Jesus?" Well, Jesus begins to teach them about the destruction of the temple, but also about the end of all things. And he's challenging them to wait patiently, but also to wait confidently on his return. And to help explain that, he gives them an object lesson. He says, think about the fig tree. In Israel, most trees keep their leaves throughout the winter. But the fig tree, it loses its leaves. And Jesus says, the fig tree, it starts to put on its leaves in the spring. And when it starts doing that, you can know that summer's on the horizon. And so all these things I'm telling you in chapter 13 are like the leaves of the fig tree. When you see the leaves of the fig tree, you know summer's coming. When you see these things happening, you know my return is imminent. My return is going to be on the doorstep. It's going to happen really quick. Then he makes this comment about this generation. He says, this generation will not pass away. Now here, it should be clear that Jesus is not talking about the guys standing in front of him. Not that generation of people right there. He's talking about this generation. He's talking about the church. He's talking about this time frame is going to last, and the church won't pass away until I come back. And that's kind of a hard thing to understand. There's lots of theories and ideas and thoughts on that. But Jesus is just saying that you can live confidently knowing that I'm going to return. And he reiterates that by his words in verse 31. With these comments about his word not passing away, Jesus is saying, my promises are for real. Just like all of Scripture is for real, and it's going to last, and it's going to have meaning and purpose forever, that's what I'm telling you. My promises will come to fruition. You can have confidence in that. With all Jesus is saying about the fact that he's coming back, that you can see things that will help you spot the end of all things, all of this gives us confidence, but it also should affect the way we live. And I want you to stop for a moment. I want you to consider that for yourself. How can the promises of Christ's return affect the manner in which believers live? Yes, knowing that Jesus is going to come back can affect the way we live in terms of holiness and righteousness, but also the fact that Jesus is coming back can give us confidence in hard times, confidence when things are bad. It can cause us to live with steadfastness as we walk through a dark world. See, Jesus is trying to help his disciples understand, yes, I'm coming back and you can live with hope. I'm coming back and you can wait confidently. You can live righteously with confidence that I'm coming back to get you in the midst of all the bad things that you may be experiencing on this earth. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He keeps going, and he's going to help the disciples see that believers should continually look for his return. Look at Mark chapter 13, verse 32. Now concerning that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Watch, be alert, for you don't know when the time is coming. It is like a man on a journey who left his house, gave authority to his servants, gave each one his work, and commanded the doorkeeper to be alert. Therefore, be alert, since you don't know when the master of the house is coming, whether in the evening or at midnight, or at the crowing of the rooster, or early in the morning. Otherwise, when he comes suddenly, he might find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to everyone, be alert. So at this point, Mark has challenged us, and Jesus challenged his followers to be confident and to wait patiently. But that waiting patiently, confidently, should not be marked by carelessness. Jesus says to watch, be alert. Those words and that repetition means stay awake, be on the lookout. And to help them understand that, he gives them a little parable. He says, it's kind of like the master of the house. He goes away, and he gives everybody their job, and doesn't tell them when he's coming back. Maybe he doesn't know. Jesus says, I don't know when I'm coming back. Only the Father knows that. And so it's kind of like the master leaves and doesn't know when he's coming home. So everybody has their job. Well, the doorkeeper in this culture, his job was to watch for the master. Keep a lookout for him. Kind of spy down the road. Make sure that you're ready and everybody's there when he gets back. But to do that, the doorkeeper, and he doesn't know when he's coming, so he can't sleep. He can't rest. He can't go and take a nap while the master's away because he doesn't know when the master's coming home. And Jesus says it's like that. You need to wait patiently, confidently, but be on the lookout. Be ready for when I come back. I want us to stop and consider one more question for ourselves. What could being alert for Jesus' return look like in the life of a believer? Just because the doorkeeper doesn't know when the master is coming back, just because the disciples don't know when Jesus is coming back, and just because we don't know when Jesus is coming back, is no excuse for us to be unprepared. While we wait confidently and patiently for the return of Christ, we are to be about his work, getting ready for his return, getting others ready for his return. We do kingdom work by doing things that propel the gospel forward. We do kingdom work by serving in our community. We do kingdom work by ministering in our church and sharing the gospel with others. Jesus says, wait confidently, wait patiently, and don't be unprepared. Do the work I've called you to do. So Mark is challenging us to continually look for the return of Jesus and be about his work. So this passage today, you could go all over the place with it, but we looked at three specific things. First, we saw that believers should rejoice over the promised return of Jesus. Believers can live with confidence when they base their lives on the promises of Jesus. And believers should continually look for the return of Jesus. Now, all of this reminds me of something that happened to the disciples right after Jesus ascended into heaven. They're standing there, and all of a sudden there's these angels there with them. Acts chapter 11, verse 11 says, they, the angels, said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking up into heaven? This same Jesus who is taken from you into heaven will come in the same way that you have seen him go into heaven. The disciples are standing there. They're looking up into heaven like, Jesus just went into heaven. And the angels say, guys, why are you standing there just staring up into the sky? Jesus is going to come back the same way he left. So get to work. That's the word for us. And like I said, we can go all over the place with this passage, but the message for us is to confidently look towards his return, wait patiently, and don't get overheated and all upset because he hadn't come back yet. It's been a long time, but don't get upset. Wait patiently. But also, be about the kingdom work. So I want to challenge you with this week. As we look toward Jesus' return, get about Jesus' work. I'll see you next week.